All right, so we have been studying how to write parabola equations, and we're going to go a little bit backwards today. We're going to look at different types of information. They're going to give us a little bit different information on each problem, and we're going to write the equation from what we are given. I'm going to stress that a very important step on each one of these will be to sketch the parabola. If you don't draw a picture, for most of you can't see what I just wrote. Let me zoom out a little bit. Sketch the parabola. For most of you, you're going to have to make a quick graph. It doesn't have to be perfect, but enough that you can count spaces and see what's happening, and we're just going to freehand that on our paper today. But that's how you're going to figure out which direction these parabolas are opening, and whether x or y go on which side of the equation, and how far away the focus is from the vertex and things like that. So our first problem, equation 1, that I want you to write down, the vertex is 3, 1, and the focus is 3, 5. So we are just handwriting today. Put that into your notebook. And we'll go from there. So vertex is 3, 1, focus is 3, 5. You can use V and F to abbreviate. And again, one of the important things I'm going to stress today is to sketch the parabola. So kind of off here to the side, I'm just going to use about 4 lines. I'm going to draw a very small little graph. So my vertex is at 3, 1. So I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3, up 1, and put a little point there for the vertex. I'm going to label it V for vertex so I remember what that is. And the focus is at 3, 5. So 2, 3, 4, 5. Put that up here. There is my focus. Now, from this information, we can figure out which direction the parabola will open. The focus is always inside the parabola, so we don't know really exactly how wide this is going to be. But we could have a rough sketch here of what direction that's going to open. And this also gives us information if we know the distance from V to F, which in this case goes from 1 to 5, that's a distance of 4. That tells us that A equals 4, and we're going to use that in our equation. So this will look familiar from when we did our graphs, but we haven't written the equation out exactly like this. So we're going to have y minus k equals 1 over 4a parentheses x minus h squared. So this is using a in a slightly different way than what we were looking at before, but this is going to help us write the equation. So what we do first is we take the vertex and put that in. So 3 goes with x, so this is going to be x minus 3 squared over here. The 1 is the y value, so I'll have y minus 1 over here. And then 1 over 4a is going to be 1 over 4 times 4. Or you could go ahead and write 16. I'm going to do it in 2 steps. That way if somebody is like, wait, where did the 16 come from? You can see what I did. So there is the equation. And that's it for the first one. It's pretty straightforward. Keep in mind that if this were to open down, I would want to make this fraction negative. And I also knew to put the y here and the x here because it was a regular parabola like we studied in previous classes that opened up or down. If it had opened side to side, the x and the y would switch. So we've talked about all of that in previous lessons, but I just want to make sure that I'm pointing all of that out as we go through. So hopefully we won't get too lost. All right, so let's go down to our next example. I'm going to do a big reveal, take my Post-it notes off. And example 2, they're going to give us a little bit different information, or I'm giving you different information actually. The vertex is 5, negative 2, and your directrix is negative 5. So we didn't get the focus this time, but it's a very similar situation. We'll be able to find the focus knowing what the directrix is. So rule of thumb, not thumb with an F, T-H. We're going to draw a quick sketch of the graph first. So the vertex is at 5, negative 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll go down to look like that. So there's 5. There's negative 2, and that is my vertex. Now the directrix is at negative 5. So there's negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. We'll say negative 5 is about right there. So here's my directrix down here. If my directrix is down here, that means the focus will be above the vertex like it was in the first example, and it will be opening up. So we look at the distance between negative 5 and negative 2. This distance right here is 3. So we're going to go the other direction and go up 3. So 1, 2, 3 puts us at positive 1, and that's where my focus is going to be, also at a distance of 3. And that will help us get our parabola information that we need. So since the focus is above the vertex, directrix is on the bottom, we know again that our parabola is going to open up something like this. Just a quick sketch. This isn't really showing us how skinny or fat the parabola would be, just giving us a general idea. So if we go into our equation, y minus k equals 1 over 4a x minus h squared, we can put in the information that we want. So I put y over here because it's just opening up again, regular parabola, trying to start with something simple. And so if we put in the 5 and the negative 2 over here, I'm going to have y plus 2, because if you subtract negative 2 it becomes plus. Over here in the parentheses I will have x minus 5. X goes with the x, y goes with the y. And then this will be 1 over 4 times 3, since our distance between the vertex and the directrix is 3, which means the vertex and the focus are also 3 apart. And then we can just rewrite y plus 2 equals 1/12 x minus 5 squared. So if this had opened down, the only difference would have been that we would have had a negative 1/12 instead of positive. So we haven't done any that opened down or left and right. I'm going to sort of jump ahead to something that's a little different, and we'll get to cover some of that. So let's go down to example 3. So for example 3, our focus is 0, negative 2. The directrix is at x equals 2. So it's a little interesting. They're not giving us the vertex at all. But we know that the vertex goes between the focus and directrix, so we can figure it out. So rule of thumb, start with a graph. The graph, I swear, is going to make this easy. Some people can visualize this really well in their heads, but I recommend writing it down. So our focus is at 0, negative 2. Let's say this is negative 2 right here, and we'll just slap the focus right there, label it with an F. And then our directrix is at x equals 2. X equals 2 would make it going through the x-axis at 2, and it would be vertical. So if my directrix is here and my focus is here, the vertex has to be halfway in between. So that means the vertex would have to be right here. And now you ask yourself, which direction would this open? Well, knowing that the directrix is here, focus is there, vertex in the middle, we know it's going to open to the left somehow. We don't know exactly what the shape is, but we can just kind of sketch it in there. And so our equation would look a little different this time. So since it's opening left, if you're doing left or right, the x and y values switch. Your domain and range completely switch, and it no longer is a function, would not pass the vertical line test. So I would have x minus h equals 1 over 4a, and then y minus k squared. So I switched the x and the y. I put x over here, y over here. And the other thing to keep in mind if it's opening left is that this fraction right here should have a negative. So make sure that looks separate from your equal sign. We should have a negative here because it opens left. You would also have a negative if you had a parabola that opened down, which you should already know, and that's just how that will change. So if we put in our vertex, which we just found over here, our vertex is at 1, negative 2. So I might just want to write that off to the side here. Vertex, or V, is 1, negative 2. I need to know what that is to put it into the equation. We put it on our graph, but then we have to actually put numbers to it. So So I would have x minus 1 equals -1 over, and so the distance between the vertex and the focus, or the vertex and directrix, is just 1, so this would be 4 times 1 down here, and then I would have y minus -2, which makes it plus 2. And then don't forget to put the squared, otherwise you get a straight line, not a parabola, and it would not be what we want. So just to rewrite it and make it neat, x minus 1 equals, this would be -1/4, y plus 2 squared. So all of these problems are just a little bit different. And what you have to do is sketch a picture, try to figure out what A is, the distance from the vertex to either the focus or directrix or both. And just keep in mind when it needs to be negative, positive, when you need to switch the x and the y, which are things that we've studied in previous lessons. And if you get all of that straight, you should be able to write your equations pretty well.